My name is Eleanor Matthews, and what I'm about to reveal to you transformed my life in a way I never imagined possible. On April 23rd, 2023, I didn't just face death. I was clinically dead for 11 minutes. In that brief but eternal moment, I was taken beyond this world and shown extraordinary truths about prayer and humility, truths that I was commanded to share with others. But before I recount the revelations I received, I need you to understand how it all began. For over 30 years, I had been a devoted Christian, faithfully attending my local church in Seattle, Washington. At 58 years old, my spiritual journey had been one of deep commitment, though I now realize I had barely scratched the surface of what true prayer could be. That particular Sunday morning, I awoke with an unshakable sense of urgency. It wasn't fear or anxiety. Rather, it was as if a silent voice within me was calling me to something greater. The feeling had started days before, a growing conviction that I needed to pray more deeply, more earnestly. And so, I resolved to arrive at church much earlier than usual to spend time alone in prayer before the congregation gathered. At 5:45 a.m., the world was still cloaked in the hush of dawn. A misty spring fog clung to the empty streets as I drove through my quiet neighborhood. The rhythm of my tires on the pavement matched the steady beat of my heart. As I neared the church, a deep sense of gratitude washed over me. I thought of the many years I had spent worshiping in that sacred space, the friendships I had formed, the countless prayers I had whispered within those walls. I never imagined that within moments my entire perception of the spiritual realm would be forever altered. Just 3 blocks from the church, it happened. From the corner of my eye, I caught a blur of movement. Then, in an instant, the deafening impact of metal on metal shattered the silence. A drunk driver, speeding through a stop sign, slammed into the driver's side of my car. The force of the collision was immense. My vehicle spun out of control, glass exploded around me, and a searing pain shot through my body. Then, nothing. Everything went dark. But that darkness wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. What happened next was more vivid, more real, than anything I had ever experienced. The doctors would later tell me that I had been clinically dead for precisely 11 minutes. But in the place where I found myself, time did not exist as we know it. I was about to witness something that would change not only my life, but the way I understood prayer, humility, and the very nature of spiritual warfare itself. Aqui está a parte 2 da história, reescrita com mudanças sutis nas palavras, acréscimos de detalhes e novo nome para a personagem principal. The last thing I remembered before everything faded to black was the sheer force of the impact, the deafening sound of crunching metal, shattering glass, and then silence. But that silence was not the end. It was only the beginning. The doctors would later tell me that I had been clinically dead for precisely 11 minutes. In those moments, my heart had stopped. My body lay motionless, and by all earthly standards, I was no longer among the living. But where I went, time did not exist as we know it. What I experienced was both instantaneous and eternal. When I became aware again, I was no longer inside my broken body. I felt no pain, no weight, no limitation, only an overwhelming sense of peace. Not a human kind of peace, not just an absence of worry, but a living presence of peace itself. It surrounded me, filled me, and breathed life into me in a way I had never known before. Then I saw it. I was no longer in the world I had known. Instead, I stood within what I can only describe as a vast ocean of light. But this was no ordinary light. It was not harsh or blinding, nor was it distant like the sun. It was alive, pulsing with warmth, like an embrace made of pure radiance. Every particle of this realm was saturated with divine life. And then, I was no longer alone. a presence stood beside me. At first, I did not see a form, only a sense of immeasurable wisdom, power, and love. But as my awareness sharpened, I began to perceive something indescribable. Not quite a figure, not bound by human features, yet unmistakably an angelic being. Without speaking, the angel communicated directly to my spirit. Watch. The moment the command was given, my vision expanded, and suddenly I could see the earth, not as we see it in the natural, but as it is in the spiritual. What I witnessed left me in absolute awe. Rising from the earth toward heaven were countless golden threads of light, stretching upwards like beams connecting the two realms. These were no ordinary lights. They moved, shimmered, and formed distinct pathways, each with a purpose beyond human comprehension. The angel spoke to my spirit once more. These are the prayers of the faithful, rising to the throne of God. I was mesmerized. I had always known that prayers were heard in heaven, but to see them, to witness their journey, their power, their beauty, was unlike anything I had ever imagined. Then, something extraordinary happened. Among the golden threads, some shone with an unparalleled intensity, as if they carried a force far beyond the others. These pierced through every layer of the spiritual atmosphere, creating direct channels between heaven and earth. The angel directed my attention toward them. These, the being communicated, are the prayers of those who prostrate themselves in complete humility before God. I was stunned. I could see it clearly. When a believer knelt in prayer, their prayer ascended like a golden thread. But when a believer lay face down in total surrender, their prayer did not simply rise. It tore through the barriers of darkness, becoming a beacon of divine light that reached straight to the throne room of heaven. At that moment, I understood something I had never fully grasped before. True humility in prayer was not just a matter of words. It was not just a posture of the body. It was a positioning of the spirit, a complete alignment with heaven's frequency. Then, the angel showed me something else, something that shook me to my core. I saw how dark forces worked tirelessly to prevent believers from understanding this truth. I saw entities of shadow whispering lies into the hearts of Christians, convincing them that full surrender was unnecessary, that such humility was outdated, that standing or sitting was enough. They knew the truth. They knew that a believer who fully surrendered, body, heart, and soul, became a direct conduit for God's power. And that was dangerous to them. I wanted to cry out, to warn every believer of this warfare they could not see. The angel continued. I was shown how different postures of prayer affected the spiritual realm. All sincere prayers were heard, but prostration unlocked something unique. It was as if, in that position of complete surrender, believers physically enacted the truth that they were utterly dependent on God. And when that outward expression matched an inward humility, something supernatural happened. Then, I saw something that brought me to tears. The angel took me to another realm, and there, before me, was Jesus himself, standing at the right hand of the Father. But what struck me most was what I saw next. The prayers of those in prostration, those golden beacons, seemed to resonate with his intercession. It was as if these prayers carried a frequency that harmonized with the very prayers of Christ, weaving into his intercession like a divine symphony. And then came the revelation that would change everything I thought I knew about spiritual warfare. I was shown that when a believer prostrated themselves in prayer, they became covered in additional layers of spiritual armor. Their words carried an authority that cut through darkness like a sword of divine light. The angel spoke once more. Many battles that have resisted ordinary prayers can be won through the power of prostration. At that moment, I understood. I had to share this truth. This revelation was not meant for me alone. It was meant for every believer who longed to understand the deeper power of prayer, and I had only just begun to see. As soon as the angel spoke those words, many battles that have resisted common prayers can be won through the power of prostration. I felt as if an invisible veil had been torn from my eyes. I had spent my entire life praying while standing, kneeling, lifting my hands, but I had never understood the hidden secret of total prostration. And then, the angel revealed the other side of the battle. The earth vanished from my sight, and in its place, I found myself standing in the middle of a battlefield. But it was not an earthly war. It was eternal, spiritual. All around me, I could see legions of angels and demons clashing in a war that human eyes could never perceive. This was no metaphor, no abstract vision. It was real, as tangible as any war in human history. I watched as some prayers rose like fire, piercing through the darkness and striking demonic forces with divine power. But others barely made it past the surface, dissipating into the air as if they lacked weight. Then, the angel turned to me, his eyes blazing with divine light. "Now you must see for yourself." At his command, my knees buckled, and I fell forward, not just kneeling, but fully prostrate before the throne of God. The moment my face touched the ground, something shifted in the heavens. A sound like rushing waters and roaring thunder filled the battlefield. The prayers of the humble, those who had surrendered completely, became like mighty swords in the hands of angels. I watched in awe as the tide of war shifted. Where there had been resistance, now there was breakthrough. Where darkness had held its ground, now it trembled. Prostration was not just an act of humility, it was a weapon. And in that moment, I understood. Some victories only come when we fall to our knees and surrender completely before God. As I lay prostrate before the throne of God, overwhelmed by the spiritual intensity surrounding me, I suddenly felt a shift in the atmosphere. The angel, still beside me, spoke again, his voice filled with both urgency and compassion. "Do you see now?" he asked, his gaze piercing into my soul. "In this position of total surrender, you are not weak. You are in alignment with heaven itself. You have become a conduit of divine power." I felt a deep inner stirring, a sense of being connected to something much larger than myself. As I lay there, the boundaries between the physical world and the spiritual realm seemed to fade away entirely. Time no longer existed. What I was experiencing transcended the limitations of earthly comprehension. In prostration, the angel continued, you tap into the frequency of heaven's will. The very act of laying yourself down in humility creates a direct connection to God's heart. In that moment, I saw visions of the world as never before. I saw millions of people praying, but only a small fraction of those prayers were carrying weight in the spiritual realm. Many were sincere, yet without the right posture, their prayers seemed to lack the power needed to break through spiritual barriers. But those in prostration, those who had humbled themselves completely, were different. Their prayers were like arrows, sharp and precise, piercing through the heavens and breaking open the doors of divine intervention. These were the prayers that moved mountains. I watched as the prayers of the saints in prostration were woven into a tapestry of light, rising like golden threads toward the throne of God. With every bow of the knee and every bow of the heart, the spiritual landscape shifted, creating paths for heaven's blessings to flow. Then, something extraordinary happened. The face of Jesus appeared before me, radiant with glory. He was not distant or untouchable. He was close, so close that I could feel his presence radiating peace and love, like an ocean of divine grace. "These are the ones who stand with me," he said softly, his voice like music to my soul. "These are the ones whose prayers I listen to, the ones who understand that true power comes not from pride, but from surrender. I watched as Jesus interceded on behalf of the world, and it was the humble prayers of the faithful in prostration that seemed to stir his heart in a unique way. Each prayer offered in total surrender acted as a bridge between heaven and earth, a holy connection that transcended time and space. In that moment, I understood that prostration wasn't just a position of prayer, it was a means of spiritual breakthrough. It wasn't about the physical act alone, but about the spiritual alignment it created between heaven's will and our own hearts. The angel then guided me further. We moved into a realm I can only describe as the court of heavenly authority. Here, I saw spiritual warriors, those who had prayed in prostration over the years, standing tall in divine authority, clothed in armor of light, their prayers having built up layers of spiritual protection around them. It was here that the angel revealed the true significance of timing. The spiritual battles you face today are not like those of the past, he said. God is raising up a generation who understands the power of prostration for the times ahead. This posture is a key weapon in the spiritual warfare of this generation. As I looked, I saw the spiritual barriers that had once seemed immovable crumbling, one by one, as the faithful humbled themselves before God. The power of prostration was breaking through strongholds that had resisted for years. The enemy knows this, the angel warned. That's why there will be resistance. There will be distractions, discomfort, and discouragement. The forces of darkness will try to keep my people from understanding this power. But there was no turning back now. I had seen the truth. I had seen the power that prostration in prayer unleashed. It was not just about personal breakthroughs, but about shifting the spiritual atmosphere over cities, nations, and generations. I knew now that God was calling his people to rediscover the lost art of humble prayer, to align their hearts with his through the sacred act of prostration.